lives, those teardrops of fire that are in my hands will become diseases springing from living creatures themselves. Brahma explained they will kill men, and if men are killed, sin shall not be thin in Areka. Seeing no alternative, eventually agreed to follow Brahma's instructions with a heavy heart. She began to take the lives of living creatures. When their time had come, her actions, guided by Brahma's wisdom, brought balance to the universes. Narada recounted the events. He noted that death's duties were not limited to taking lives alone. She was also responsible for guiding souls towards their next destination where they would be reborn, and for maintaining the natural order of the world. The wind with its...
In the midst of a summer conversation, King Yudhishthira turned to the revered sage Vesa with a heavy heart. He sought solace in the stories of ancient kings who had led righteous lives and achieved great deeds. Vesa, sensing his distress, began to recount a tale of King Srinjaya, a monarch renowned for his kindness and devotion in a grand palace. Surrounded by the wise rishis Narada and Parvata, King Srinjaya welcomed them with open arms. As they sat together, his beautiful daughter approached her father seeking blessings. The rishis were struck by her radiant presence, and Parvata asked if she was the embodiment of the divine or goddess in human form. Narada, ever the suitor, proposed to Srinjaya that he give his daughter's hand in marriage to him. Delighted with the idea, Srinjaya agreed, but Parvata grew indignant at being overlooked. The two rishis engaged in a heated exchange, with Narada defending his actions and Parvata cursing him, saying that without completing the ceremonial rites, their union would be invalid. As the days passed, King Srinjaya, eager to have a son, began to entertain Brahmanas with lavish gifts of food and robes. The wise men, pleased by his devotion, approached Narada and requested that he grant the king a son endowed with great virtues and accomplishments. Narada agreed, and soon a child named Suvarnashtivan was born. The prince grew up to be a brilliant and powerful young man, and King Srinjaya's wealth increased exponentially. However, a group of robbers, driven by avarice, stole the prince and slaughtered him in the woods. As they struck each other in their frenzy, they perished, and with them the gold and wealth that had accumulated. Due to Narada's boon, King Srinjaya was consumed by grief upon learning of his son's tragic fate. His world crumbled around him as he mourned the loss of his child. It was then that Narada appeared before him, offering words of comfort and wisdom. He reminded Srinjaya that even great sages like Maruta had to face the consequences of their actions. Narada recounted the tale of King Maruta, who, despite being blessed with immense wealth and divine favor, ultimately met his demise due to his own hubris. The Rishi's words served as a poignant reminder that even the most righteous among us can fall prey to the whims of fate. Yudhishthira listened intently to Vesa's tale. He was struck by the complexities of human nature and the transience of wealth and power. The story of King Srinjaya and his son served as a cautionary tale, underscoring the importance of living a virtuous life and being mindful of one. In the realm of ancient India, a legendary king named Sautra ruled with unparalleled greatness. His kingdom was a marvel of prosperity, where the gods themselves would often visit to behold his majesty. Narada, a revered sage, spoke of King Sautra's extraordinary life to Srinjaya, saying, "This great king, O Srinjaya, fell prey to death, but his legacy lives on." King Sautra was a hero unlike any other, invincible in battle and beloved by the gods. He had acquired his kingdom through righteous means and sought the counsel of his wise advisors, the Ritwajas Brahmanas and domestic priests. These learned men guided him in his pursuit of virtue and wealth, and King Sautra heeded their advice with devotion. As a just ruler, King Sautra protected his subjects with kindness and generosity. He performed grand sacrifices to appease the gods and vanquished his enemies with his trusty arrows. His kingdom flourished under his wise leadership, becoming a haven from the threats of mlechas and forest thieves. The deity of the clouds, pleased by King Sautra's piety, showered gold upon his realm, filling the rivers with liquid treasure and making them accessible to all. In those halcyon days, the kingdom's artificial lakes sparkled like jewels, each measuring 2 miles in circumference. Thousands of golden statues of dwarfs, humpbacks, alligators, macaras, and tortoises adorned the landscape, a testament to King Sautra's boundless wealth. The king himself was awestruck by this dazzling spectacle, wondering at the endless riches that had accumulated under his rule. Moved by the blessings of the gods, King Sautra He decided to share his good fortune with the Brahmanas during a grand sacrifice performed at Kurutingala. He distributed an unlimited amount of gold to these revered sages before completing the ritual. Throughout his reign, King Sotra had undertaken countless horse sacrifices, rajashwas, and sacred Kshatriya sacrifices, each time lavishly rewarding the Brahmanas with gifts. As a devout king, Sotra also observed daily rites fulfilling specific desires that brought him closer to his ultimate goal. His life was a testament to the power of righteousness and devotion. When King Sotra finally passed away, Narada's words echoed through Srinjaya's heart. "You should not grieve for your son, O Srinjaya, for he has failed to match the 4 cardinal virtues of this great king." The tale of King Sotra served as a reminder that true greatness lies in living a life of virtue, kindness, and devotion. In the ancient land of India, a wise sage named Narada shared a tale with King Srinjaya. The mighty king Parva, Narada, has met his demise, leaving behind the legacy that will be remembered for ages to come. The king's exploits were legendary, and Narada's words sparked the imagination of the listening monarch. As Narada spoke, he painted a vivid picture of King Parva's grandeur. He was a just ruler, Narada said, who gave away 1,000 times 10,000 horses, all white as snow. These majestic steeds were the envy of many kingdoms. The king had performed a massive horse sacrifice, a ritual that drew scholars and sages from far and wide. These learned Brahmanas versed in the ancient arts of Siksha and Akshara came to witness. The spectacle of Brahmanas purified by their study of the Vedas were a sight to behold. Their faces shone with a gentle light, and they moved with an air of quiet confidence. They had obtained gifts from King Parva: robes, houses, beds, carpets, vehicles, and cattle, which they valued deeply. But it was not just material wealth that these scholars sought. They were also drawn to the performances of actors, dancers, and singers who entertained them. During their stay, as Narada continued his tale, he revealed the extent of King Parva's generosity. At each of his sacrifices, Narada said, he gave away 10,000 elephants resplendent with golden splendor, their bodies glistening with the juice of ripened fruit. He also presented them with chariots made of gold adorned with standards and banners. The king's largesse did not stop there. He also gifted 1,000 times 10,000 maidens, each one adorned with ornaments of gold. These gifts were but a small part of King Parva's offerings. He also gave away cars, steeds, elephants for mounting houses, fields, hundreds of kind by the thousands, and cowards decked in gold. The king's sacrifices were renowned throughout the land, and those who had witnessed them sang songs of his generosity. He gave away kine with cows, they would say, whose horns shone like gold and whose hooves sparkled like silver. He presented female slaves and male slaves as his camels, sheep, countless in number, and diverse kinds of gifts. Narada's words painted a picture of a king who was truly a master of the 4 cardinal virtues: dharma, beauty, artha, wealth, kama, pleasure, and moksha, liberation. His sacrifices were not just grand displays of wealth, they were also a means to attain spiritual growth. When King Parva passed away, his legacy lived on, inspiring awe in those who heard the tale. In the realm of ancient India, a legendary king named Siva, son of Usanara, reigned supreme. His exploits were the stuff of legend, and his name was whispered in awe by those who knew of his greatness. King Siva's kingdom was vast, stretching across mountains, islands, seas, and forests, with his mighty chariot thundering through it all, leaving a trail of wonder in its wake. He rode forth to conquer new lands. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath him. His prowess in battle knew no bounds, and his enemies fell before him like autumn leaves before winter's chill. Yet, despite his martial prowess, King Siva was not one to forget the sacred duties of a Kshatriya. He performed countless sacrifices, showering his Brahmanas with gifts of gold, elephants, steeds, and other precious treasures. The king's generosity knew no limits. He gave away as many kind cattle as the number of raindrops that fell on the earth, or the stars in the firmament, or the grains of sand on the riverbeds. His sacrificial compounds were a marvel to behold. Rivers of drink flowed through them, and hills of food rose like white mountains. The air was filled with the sweet scent of milk and curds collected in vast lakes. The Brahmanas who attended these grand sacrifices numbered by the myriads. Their voices raised in joyous chanting as they partook of the king's bounty, and at the heart of it all stood King Sivai, his heart overflowing with devotion to the gods, his spirit burning bright with a desire to please them. It was said that even Rudra, the mighty god of the elements, took notice of the king's righteousness, and granted him a boon. Let your wealth, your devotion, your fame, and the love of all creatures be inexhaustible, Rudra declared, and so it came to pass. King Sivai's kingdom prospered, his people adored him, and his name became synonymous with greatness. But as with all things in this mortal coil, even the greatest among us must eventually depart. When King Sivai passed on to the realms of the gods, his son Srinjaya was overcome with grief. He wept and wailed, calling out for his father Oswadia, Oswadia. But Narada, wise sage, that he was gently rebuked him, reminding him that his own son had not followed in the footsteps of his illustrious father. Your son performed no sacrifice, made no sacrificial present, Narada said softly. He did not strive to emulate your greatness. Srinjaya's words cut deep into Srinjaya's heart, and he was forced to confront the truth of his own son's shortcomings. Yet even as he mourned the loss of his, in the verdant lands of Ayodhya, a mighty ruler named Rama, son of King Dasaratha, was said to have reigned with unparalleled splendor. Narada, a sage known for his piercing insight, approached Rama's brother Lakshmana and spoke words that would echo through eternity. Rama, the embodiment of unyielding energy, has met his Dimas. The news sent shockwaves throughout the kingdom, but it was soon revealed that Rama had lived a life worthy of the goddess. The story unfolded. It became clear that Rama's prowess in battle was matched only by his compassion. For 14 years, he dwelled in the forest with his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana, protecting the ascetics from the ferocious Rakshasas. It was during this time that Ravana, a powerful Rakshasa, beguiled Rama and abducted Sita, sparking a chain of events that would change the course of his story. The battle-scarred landscape of Janasthana bore witness to Rama's unyielding fury as he slew 14,000 Rakshasas. His wrath was likened to that of Lord Shiva himself, who had vanquished the Asura and Aka in a bygone era. Ravana, the descendant of Pulastya, was finally defeated, and his kinsmen and followers met their demise at Rama's hands. The people rejoiced at Rama's victory, and the gods themselves took notice of his extraordinary virtues. The celestial sages, known as rishis, sang hymns in praise of Rama, hailing him as a paradise of righteousness. As Rama's kingdom flourished, he performed grand sacrifices, including the Jaruthaya ritual, which brought forth libations of clarified butter to delight Indra. The king of the gods. Rama's subjects prospered under his wise rule, and their lives were filled with joy and abundance. The air was free from flies and gnats, and beasts of prey and poisonous reptiles did not dare to venture near. His people lived long lives, blessed with 1,000 children each, and their youth remained vibrant for 1,000 years. As the ages passed, Rama's kingdom became a paradise on earth. The Rakshasas who had once obstructed the worship of the gods and the Pitras ancestors were vanquished by Rama, allowing the people to resume their sacred rituals. Seniors no longer had to perform funeral rites for their juniors, as death was a rare occurrence in this golden age. Rama's reign lasted an astonishing 11,000 years, during which time he became the very embodiment of strength and beauty. His subjects revered him, and his name became synonymous with virtue and excellence. When Rama finally departed for the heavens, taking his 4 kinds of subjects with him, the world mourned the loss of its greatest. In a distant era, King Bhairath, the descendant of Idshake, who had risen to unprecedented heights, his name became synonymous with generosity and devotion. The shores of Ganga, now known as Bhairath, were transformed into a majestic site adorned with flights of steps made of gold. This was a testament to the king's boundless wealth and his unwavering commitment to the gods. As the news of King Bhairath's unparalleled sacrifices spread far and wide, a multitude of men gathered at his court. They came to witness the grandeur of the king's offerings and to partake in the blessings that flowed from them. Among these devotees was Ganga, the celestial river goddess who had been afflicted by the weight of her own waters. She descended upon the earth, seeking refuge on King Bhairath's lap. As she sat upon his lap, a deep bond formed between the king and the goddess. Her presence brought solace to the king, and he was overjoyed to have her by his side. The gods themselves took notice of this extraordinary union and declared Ganga to be the king's daughter. This divine recognition transformed her into a source of salvation for the king's deceased Ancestors began harvest celestial musicians with enchanting voices sang hymns in praise of King Baidra's devotion. Their melodies echoed through the realms of the gods, the rishis, and human beings alike. The king's sacrifices were always graced by the presence of the gods. Led by Indra himself, the very gods would participate in these rituals, removing all obstacles to facilitate. The ceremonious King Vajra's generosity knew no bounds. He bestowed upon the Brahmanas whatever they desired without requiring them to leave their places of worship. His wealth was a manifestation of his ascetic merit, and he had earned the respect and admiration of the gods. The king's ultimate goal was to ascend to the realm of Brahman, where he would be free from the cycle of birth and death as the years passed. King Vajra's fame spread far and wide. His name became synonymous with righteousness, compassion, and devotion. He had surpassed all kings and princes in his pursuit of spiritual growth. When the time came for him to depart this world, he ascended to the realm of Brahman. Thanks to the blessings of the Brahmanas, the king's passing left a void in the hearts of those who knew him. His son Swetya was overcome with grief, lamenting his father's departure. But Narada, wise sage, that he was sought to console Srinjaya, saying, "Your son should not grieve for King Vajratha, for he had lived a life of unparalleled devotion and generosity. His sacrifices were a testament to his compassion and selflessness." In the realm of ancient India, where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, a tale of a mighty king unfolded. Narada, a sage with eyes that saw beyond the veil of time, spoke to Srinjaya about the life and legacy of King Dilapa, the son of Havala. "Dilapa, O Srinjaya," Narada began, his voice like a gentle breeze on a summer day, "was a king who ruled over a land filled with treasures. His reign was marked by grand sacrifices, where Brahmanas, vested in the knowledge of truth, would gather to perform rituals and bless his kingdom. As Dilapa's fame spread far and wide, kings from neighboring lands would come to witness his majesty. First, and the roads leading to his capital city were paved with gold, a testament to the king's boundless wealth and generosity. Even the gods themselves, led by Indra, would pay homage to Dilapa, regarding him as an embodiment of Dharma, the eternal law that governed the universe. Narada continued. The upper and lower rings of his sacrificial stake were made of gold, a symbol of his unwavering commitment to the sacred ritual set. Dilapa's sacrifices, a spectacle unlike any other, unfolded. Thousands would gather to partake in the feast, where Rega Kandavas, a dish prepared with exquisite care, was served. Many who ate from this bounty were seen to lie down on the golden roads, overcome by the sheer joy and abundance of the occasion. Even Dilapa's chariot, which had been designed for battle, proved itself worthy in times of peace, its wheels never sinking into the waters. As it traversed the rivers, as Narada spoke, Srinjaya listened with rapt attention, his heart swelling with a mix of awe and reverence. He knew that he stood before a sage who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Even those who saw King Dilapa, Narada said, a firm bowman, always truthful in speech, giving away profuse gifts at his sacrifices, succeeded in ascending to heaven. The very thought sent shivers down Srinjaya's spine as he contemplated the possibility of achieving such a lofty goal. In the heart of Dilapa's kingdom there existed an abode known as Katanga, where the sounds of Vedic recitations, the twanging of boughs, and the cries of drink and joy and eat would echo through the halls. It was a place where the boundaries between heaven and earth seemed to blur, and the very fabric of reality was woven with the threads of devotion and sacrifice. As Narada's tale drew to a close, Srinjaya's gaze fell upon his own son Swetya. He remembered the boy's life, marked by a lack of purpose and a failure to follow in Dilapa's footsteps. In the realm of ancient India, a legendary king named Mandhatri, son of Yuvanasva, was said to have achieved unparalleled greatness. His story began in a most extraordinary manner, as his twin Aswin physicians extracted him from his father's womb after he had been conceived during a sacrifice. The tale goes King Yuvanasva, while on a hunting expedition, became parched and exhausted his steeds too wary to continue. Spotting a wisp of wreath of smoke rising from a nearby sacrifice, he followed its trail to partake in the sacred rituals. It was there that he inadvertently conceived Mandhatra. The gods themselves marveled at the child's celestial splendor and wondered how they could provide for his sustenance. Indra, a mighty king of the gods, stepped forward, offering his fingers at a nourishing substitute for his mother's milk, and so from Indra's own hand sweet nectar flowed forth to sustain Mandhatrius. The boy suckled Indra's fingers He grew at an astonishing rate, increasing in stature by 12 cubits. Every day, in just 12 days, Mandatri reached a towering height and developed extraordinary prowess. With his mighty bow, he conquered the entire earth within a single day, leaving no challenge unvanquished. His conquests were numerous. Janamjayat, Sadamwanjayat, son of Rahabrathanrega. All fell before him. The lands that once knew Mandatri's dominion still bear the name of his glory. A testament to his unfaltering ambition and unyielding spirit, Mandatri's reign was marked by grandeur as he performed 100 horse sacrifices and 100 Rajeshwaya sacrifices. He lavished gifts upon the Brahmanas, golden fish that stretched 10 yojanas in length and a breadth of 1 yojana, and mountains of savory delicacies that fed countless others who came to partake in his ceremonies. The air was filled with the sweet scent of clarified buttermilk, and honey as rivers flowed with lakes of liquid gold, surrounded by diverse sops, curds, and nectar-like waters. Gods, Asuras, men, Ichas, Gandharvas, snakes, birds, and countless Brahmanas and Rishis all gathered to witness Mandatri's splendor. As his reign reached its zenith, the king bestowed the entire earth upon the Brahmanas, filling their hearts with joy. And when he finally passed on like the setting sun, his name became synonymous with righteousness. Echoing throughout eternity, the words of Narada still lingered in Srinjaya's mind as he reflected on Mandatri's extraordinary life, who excelled thee in the 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee was much superior to thee, son, thou shouldst not grieve. In a distant land where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, King Yeotai, son of Nahusha, sat in contemplation. His wise friend Narada approached him with solemn news. Yeotai, we hear that you have fallen prey to death. The king's eyes widened in shock as he rose from his throne. Narada continued, despite performing 100 Rajeshwayas, 1,000 horse sacrifices, and countless other sacrifices, where you made generous gifts to the Brahmanas, your spirit was not satiated. You gave away the wealth of the Maiksharas and those who hated the Brahmanas, dividing the earth into 4 parts and distributing it among 4 worthy individuals. Yeotai's thoughts drifted back to his virtuous deeds as Narada spoke. The gods and Asuras prepared for battle. King Yeotai had sided with the gods. His prowess in battle was renowned, and he roamed the celestial woods like a second Indra, unencumbered by worldly cares, acquainted with all the Vedas. Yeotai's wisdom and knowledge were boundless. However, his passions eventually consumed him, and he realized that even the vast wealth of the earth could not satiate one man's desires. With this newfound understanding, Yeotai abandoned his kingdom and retired into the forest with his wives Devayani, daughter of Usanus, and Sarmishta. Whatever paddy, wheat, gold, animals, or women exist on earth, he said to them, even their entirety is not enough for one man. We must cultivate contentment. And so they left behind the trappings of royalty, seeking a life of simplicity and inner peace. Years passed, and Yeotai's son, who had performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial gifts, ascended to the throne. Narada now addressed Srinjaya, saying, O Srinjaya, you should not grieve for Yeotai's passing. He was superior to you in all 4 cardinal virtues. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, his son, may have inherited his title, but he lacked the wisdom and virtue of his father. As Narada spoke, Srinjaya reflected on the legacy of King Yeotai, a man who had walked among gods and mortals alike, leaving behind a testament to the power of contentment and selflessness. The words of Narada hung in the air like a gentle breeze, carrying with them the weight of Yeotai's story. In his passing, the king had left behind a lesson for all that true fulfillment lies not in material wealth or worldly success, but in cultivating contentment and living a life of virtue. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a warm orange glow, Srinjaya, in a distant land, Narada spoke words of sorrow to Srinjaya, sharing news of Ambarisha's untimely demise. O Srinjaya, he said, Ambarisha, the son of Navagat, has fallen in battle alone. He fought against 1,000 kings, each one as fierce and skilled with their weapons as the next to sin, unfolded like a tempest, with Ambarisha standing firm amidst the chaos. His strength and agility allowed him to wield his arms with precision, cutting down umbrella after umbrella, standard after standard, and lance after lance, sending his enemies scattering in all directions. The noise of battle was deafening as he fought on, but Ambarisha's focus remained unwavering. As the fight wore on, the enemy leaders began to falter, their coats of mail discarded, as they begged for mercy. We yield ourselves to thee, they implored Ambarisha, their voices Trembling with fear, he, however, was not one to show cruelty in victory. With a wave of his hand, he spared their lives and offered them protection in the aftermath of battle, and Varish's triumph was celebrated across the land. He performed 100 grand sacrifices, each one a testament to his devotion to the ancient rituals ordained by the Scriptures. The offerings were lavish with every kind of delicacy available: sweetmeats, Puricus and Purus, Apucus and Sashculus, Caramus and Prithum, Ridwicus, Marica and Regacandivus, all manner of confectionery clarified, butter, honey, milk, water, sweet curds, and an assortment of fruits and roots. The festivities continued late into the night as people from far and wide gathered to partake in the joy. Those who had grown accustomed to wine drank their fill, singing and playing music on their instruments. Thousands more were intoxicated by the sheer pleasure of it all, dancing and singing hymns to Amarish's praise. Others, unable to resist the owner of the festivities, succumbed to the intoxicating effects and fell to the ground. As the sacrifices came to a close, Simvarisha distributed the kingdoms of Kuplas, kings, among his 10 million priests, as sacrificial gifts. He also bestowed upon them princes and kings, all resplendent in their golden armor, with white umbrellas above their heads, seated on golden cars and surrounded by their retinue. Yes, the great rishis, witnessing Amarish's generosity, were filled with joy and admiration. They declared that no one before or after him had ever matched his level of liberality. When you died, they said to Srinjaya, who was superior to you in the 4 cardinal virtues, and who was more superior than your son, who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present, their words served as a gentle rebuke.
In a far-off kingdom, King Sasivandu reigned supreme. His name echoed through the land, synonymous with beauty and unmatched prowess in battle. Narada, a wise sage, stood before Srinjaya, his words dripping with reverence as he shared the news of the king's passing. "O Srinjaya," Narada said gently, "King Sasivandu has left this world behind. He was a just ruler whose virtue shone like stars on a clear night. His kingdom was a testament to his greatness, a land of plenty, where people lived in contentment and peace." As Narada spoke, Srinjaya's eyes grew wide with wonder. He had heard tales of Sasivandu's exploits, but nothing could have prepared him for the truth. The king's reign was marked by grandeur, his sacrifices a spectacle to behold. With each wife 1,000 sons were born, all strong and brave, their prowess in battle unmatched. These princes, with golden coats of mail adorning their bodies, rode into battle on magnificent steeds, their bows singing with precision as they shot down their enemies. Their father's love for them knew no bounds. He gave away each one to the Brahmanas, gifting them as sacrificial presents in his grand horse sacrifices. Behind each prince a retinue of hundreds followed, cars, elephants, and fair maidens, all decked in gold. The beauty of their entourages was only matched by the splendor of the king's gifts to the Brahmanas. Mountains of food and drink that towered above 2 miles high. Even after the completion of his horse sacrifices, 13 such mountains remained untouched. Srinjaya listened mesmerized as Narada painted a picture of a kingdom at peace. People lived in happiness, free from fear, their bellies full and content. The king's reign was long, but ultimately he ascended to heaven, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for generations to come. As Srinjaya reflected on the king's life, Narada's words cut deep. "You should not grieve for your son Swadhyaya, who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. He was inferior to King Sasivandu in all aspects of virtue, the truth sung. But it also served as a reminder true greatness lies not in the grandeur of one's deeds, but in the depth of one's character." Srinjaya bowed his head, acknowledging the wisdom of Narada's words. He knew that he had much to learn from the king's example, a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his days. In the realm of ancient India, a king named Gaya, son of Amartyases, was renowned for his extraordinary devotion. For 100 years, he had been subsisting solely on the remnants of clarified
Butter poured into the sacrificial fire a testament to his unwavering dedication to the gods and day. Narad, a wise and revered sage, approached Gaia with the news that his time on this earth was drawing to a close as the king's mortal coil began to unravel. Ignite a fiery deity of the sacred flame appeared before him. The god, pleased by Gaia's unshakable devotion, offered to grant him a boon. Gaia, with an eagerness that bordered on reverence, requested a thorough understanding of the Vedas gained through ascetic penances, strict adherence to Brahmacharya, and the blessings of his superiors. He also asked for inexhaustible wealth acquired through the practice of his duties without harming others. Furthermore, he wished to be able to bestow gifts upon the Brahmanas with devotion to procreate sons from wives within his own order and to delight in righteousness. And I, satisfied by Gaia's words, vanished as suddenly as he appeared, and thus the king's desires were fulfilled. His heart, now aglow with the knowledge of the Vedas and the blessings of the gods, Gaia marched forth to conquer his foes in a series of fair battles. As he did so, the very earth seemed to tremble with awe. For 100 years Gaia continued to perform an array of sacrifices, each one more magnificent than the last. He lavished gifts upon the Brahmanas, distributing hundreds of thousands of kind, 10,000 steeds, and 1 crore gold coins upon the completion of each sacrifice under every constellation. He bestowed presents ordained by tradition, showering his kingdom with wealth and generosity. The grandeur of Gaia's horse sacrifice was a spectacle to behold. A golden earth, crafted by the king's skilled artisans, was given away to the Brahmanas, who marveled at its beauty. The stakes used in this sacrifice were forged from gold adorned with gems that shone like stars in the night sky. As Gaia's sacrifices reached their zenith, the creatures of the world, from the depths of the unseen to the heavens above, felt the effects of his generosity. They rejoiced at the abundance of wealth and food distributed by the king, proclaiming that no other sacrifice could match the grandeur of Gaia's. Even the very mountains seemed to tremble with joy when the great horse sacrifice finally came to a close. 25 hills of food remained untouched, along with numerous lakes and rivers overflowing with juicy drinks. The sacred altar itself, 30 yojanas in length, 26 yojanas in width, and 20 yojanas in height, was made. In a distant land where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, there lived a king named Rantideva, son of Srinjaya. He was known for his boundless generosity and compassion towards the Brahmanas, the revered priests, who upheld the sacred traditions of the land. Rantideva's kitchen was a marvel to behold, where 200,000 skilled cooks labored day and night to prepare exquisite feasts that, for the gods, the aroma of steaming delicacies wafted through the air, enticing guests from far and wide to partake in the king's hospitality. With an abundance of resources at his disposal, Rantideva would exclaim, "I give thee nishkas," a golden coin that symbolized his boundless generosity. As he showered his treasures upon the Brahmanas, the king's devotion to the Vedas, ancient scriptures revered by the people, was unmatched. He had studied them with great diligence and applied their teachings in his daily life. His prowess on the battlefield was legendary, for he had subdued his enemies through fair combat, upholding the principles of justice and righteousness. Animals from far and wide would come to him, seeking to be sacrificed in his Agnihotra rituals, which ensured their safe passage into the afterlife. A riverside of Charmanwataya, tributary born from the secretions flowing from Rantideva's kitchen, was said to have originated from the countless sacrifices performed by the king. His palace was a treasure trove of gold and precious gems, where Rantideva would often give away his wealth in the form of golden bulls, kine, and nishkas. He would distribute these treasures every fortnight for 100 years, accompanied by an entourage of cooks, servants, and Brahmanas. The grandeur of Rantideva's kingdom was such that even the gods would take part in his rituals, sipping the libations of clarified butter poured into the fire. The Pitra's ancestral spirits would receive their due share from the offerings made to them. During the Sraddha ceremonies, superior Brahmanas would come to him with their desires, and Rantideva would graciously grant them what they sought on special occasions. When guests gathered in his palace, where Rantideva's cooks would sacrifice 121,000 kine to feed the assembly. Despite this extravagant display of generosity, There was never a shortage of food or resources in the kingdom. Whenever he had any gold left over from his sacrifices, Rantideva would give it away to the Brahmanas. As his days passed, Rantideva's selflessness and kindness became the stuff of legend. Even Kuvera, the god of wealth, was said to have been surpassed by the king in terms of generosity. The people would sing a song in awe. We have. In a distant land where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, there lived a young prince named Bharata. He was the son of Dashmata and the grandson of Sakuntala, a woman of great beauty and virtue. As a child, Bharata had been sent to live in the forest, where he grew up under the care of the wise and venerable sage Kanwa. But little did anyone know that this young prince was destined for greatness, for as soon as he could walk, Bharata began to exhibit extraordinary strength and courage. He would venture into the heart of the forest fearless and unafraid, and confront the very beasts that roam the land. Lions with snow-white manes and tigers with eyes like burning embers will often cross his path. But instead of fleeing, Bharata would challenge them to a duel. With a mere touch of his hand, he could subdue even the most ferocious of creatures. The lions, their strength sapped by his mighty will, would crumble beneath his feet, while the tigers, their claws and teeth rendered useless, would slink away in defeat. Bharata's prowess was such that even the mightiest elephants, with their tusks and trunks, could not withstand him. As he grew older, Bharata's exploits became the stuff of legend. The sages who lived in the forest, wise men who had spent years studying the ancient arts, will often gather around to hear tales of his bravery. They would call him Sarvadamana, or the controller of all, for it seemed that no creature could resist his will. But as Bharata's fame grew, so did his sense of duty. He knew that he was destined for greater things, and so he turned his attention to performing the great sacrifices that would bring prosperity and peace to his people with the blessings of the gods. Bharata began to perform the horse sacrifices on the banks of the Yamuna, Saraswati, and Ganga. For 1,000 days he performed the rituals with precision and devotion, offering gifts of wealth to the Brahmanas who came to witness the spectacle. The gods themselves descended from their heavenly realm to participate in the ceremonies led by Indra, the king of kings. As the sacrifices reached their climax, the sages would chant the ancient hymns, while Bharata would offer his prayers and make his gifts. And when the last sacrifice was complete, Bharata distributed his wealth among the Brahmanas, giving them 10,000 billions of gold coins, along with beautiful horses, elephants, cars, gems, camels, goats, sheep, slaves, and grains. His generosity knew no bounds, for he gave away villages, fields, and robes to those who had come to witness the spectacle. But even as Bharata's life reached its peak, fate had other plans. He died leaving. In a bygone era, King Pritha, the illustrious son of Vena, ruled over the world with wisdom and benevolence. His reign was marked by unparalleled prosperity, as if the very earth itself had been blessed by his presence. The great sages who had anointed him as emperor during the grand Rajasuya sacrifice witnessed first in the splendor of his kingdom. Under Pritha's guidance, the land yielded abundant crops without any cultivation, and the kine produced milk at the mere touch of their udders. Lotus flowers were filled with honey, hues of blades shelved like gold, and fruits ripened to perfection on trees. His subjects lived in harmony, free from fear or want, and their every whim was granted. The king's dominions were a paradise on earth, where people dwelled as they pleased, unencumbered by the constraints of provinces or towns. As Pritha traversed the land, even the sea parted to make way for him, its waves solidifying into a path. Mountains yielded openings for his passage, and his chariot standard remained unbroken, undeterred by any obstacle. The very gods, azurous men, snakes, sages, apsaras, and pitris, all gathered before the king, acknowledging him as their emperor, protector, and father. Moved by their devotion, Pritha granted them boons, allowing each to obtain what they desired most. He took up his mighty Ajagava bow and terrible arrows, then addressed the earth with a gentle command, "Come quickly, O earth, yield to these the milk they desire." The earth, revering him as her son, replied, "It behooves you, O Hera, to regard me as your daughter." Thus began an extraordinary spectacle. As Pritha's subjects milked the earth, each group obtained what they sought. Trees yielded their sap for wine, mountains produced gems and herbs, gods and asuras received energy and strength, humans cultivated crops, snakes extracted poison, sages acquired the Vedas, H's gained the power of disappearance at Woolgenvarvis, and Apsaras collected fragrant perfumes. Pitras obtained Swahat as their milk. Even the cows and vessels employed in this wondrous act remain to this day a testament to Pritha's benevolencies. The king continued to perform sacrifices. He gratified all creatures by granting them gifts that pleased their hearts. He created golden images of every article on earth and bestowed them upon the Brahmanas as his grand horse sacrifice. 60,000 elephants made of gold were given away to the priests, along with the entire earth adorned with jewels, gifts, and gold. When Pritha's time finally came to an end, his subjects mourned his passing. But Narada, a wise sage, reminded them that their grief was misplaced, for in Kingpur, in the ancient land of Bharat, Narada, a wise and revered sage, stood before Srinjaya. His eyes filled with a deep sorrow. He spoke words that would forever change the course of his story. Even Rama, the great ascetic, the hero worshipped by all heroes, will die. His life will not be long enough to satiate his desires. Rama, the son of Jamadigni, with a name synonymous with bravery and virtue, he had single-handedly rid the earth of its greatest evils, ushering in an era of unparalleled prosperity. But even as he basked in the glory of his achievements, Narada's words struck a chord within him. Rama's story began many years ago, when his father Jamadigni was brutally slain by Kartavirya, a Kshatriya warrior who had never been vanquished before. Rama, fueled by rage and a desire for justice, slew Kartavirya with ease. His bow sang its deadly song as he cut down 50,000 Kshatriyas in the battle that followed. Among them were Kwavans and Brahmana-hating warriors from the Dantakura country, who met their end at Rama's hands. As the carnage unfolded, Rama's axe rose and fell with precision, striking down 10,000 Kshatriyas. He could not bear the insults hurled by his enemies, nor the cries of anguish from the Brahmanas, who witnessed the slaughter with a fierce determination. Rama marched on, leaving in his wake the defeated armies of the Kashmiris. Duridas and other tribes. His conquests were nothing short of phenomenal. He traversed the length and breadth of Bharata, slaying thousands upon thousands of Kshatriyas. With each step the earth itself seemed to tremble as Rama's whetted shafts pierced the hearts of his foes, creating a deluge of blood that filled lakes and rivers. Like he eventually, Rama created a grand sacrifice known as the horse sacrifice, where he offered the entire earth, teeming with animals and inhabitants, to Kasyap, a great sage. The earth was his gift, free from robbers and overflowing with honest men. And though he had devastated the land of its Kshatriyas 21 times over, Rama's ultimate sacrifice was not just of the earth, but also of himself. As Narada spoke these words, Srinjaya's heart itched for his own son, who had performed no great deeds and made no grand sacrifices. But Narada's message was clear: even the greatest heroes will eventually succumb to the cycle of life. Rama, the enhancer of Pritha's fame, would one day die, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for generations to come. In the end, it was Kasyapa who accepted the earth from. In the presence of the wise Vesa, King Srinjaya listened intently to the sacred histories of 16 kings whose lives had been extended by their devotion and selfless deeds. The stories spoke of monarchs who had performed grand sacrifices, showering wealth upon the Brahmanas, and had thus earned a longer life on earth. As Vesa finished recounting these tales, King Srinjaya remained silent, lost in thought. Rishi Narada, who had been narrating the stories, approached him with compassion in his eyes. O mighty King, Narada said gently, have you grasped the essence of these sacred stories, or have they slipped away from your mind like a Sudra Srata performed by a person of noble birth? King Srinjaya slowly rose to his feet, his hands clasped in reverence. O revered Rishi, he said, his voice filled with emotion, I have listened to these wondrous stories, and my heart has been cleansed of its grief, just as the darkness is dispelled by the radiant sun. I am at peace now, free from my sins. But tell me, O wise one, what shall I do next? Narada smiled, his eyes twinkling with kindness. By good fortune your grief has been lifted. He said, now ask for whatever boon you desire, and it shall be yours. We never speak falsehoods. King Srinjaya's face lit up with joy, but then he hesitated. I am content, O Rishi, he said humbly, if only you are pleased with me. He who pleases You as no unfulfilled desires in this world Arida, nodded graciously, I shall grant your heart's desire. King Srinjaya. He said, your son slain by robbers, like an animal in a sacrifice, shall be restored to you, freed from the terrible Helsas. Narada spoke. The prince of Srinjaya appeared before his father radiant and strong, just as the son of Kavara himself. King Srinjaya was overjoyed, reunited with his long-lost child. He performed grand sacrifices, bestowing abundant gifts upon the Brahmanas. But then Vesa spoke up, his voice like a gentle breeze. Your son, O King Srinjaya, had not fulfilled his purpose in life. He said, he was brave and heroic, but his bravery led him to his death on the battlefield. He has attained the eternal goal that Yujins achieved through contemplation or great sacrifices. Vesa's words were like a balm to King Srinjaya's heart. He realized that his son had transcended the world, shining in his own immortal light. Your son, Abhimanyu, Vesa said, has obtained a new body of lunar essence. As the sun set on that fateful day, the battlefield fell silent. The troops from both sides had retired to their tents. Exhausted and weary from the carnage, they had witnessed Arjuna. His heart heavy with grief rode his victorious chariot towards his tent, accompanied by Krishna. As he approached, he turned to Krishna with tears in his eyes, asking why his heart was filled with fear, and his speech faltered. Krishna, sensing Arjuna's distress, replied reassuringly, everything is fine, my brother. Do not worry, some men or evil will occur elsewhere. But Arjuna's concerns only deepened as he reflected on the day's events. He had fought valiantly, but at what cost? The memories of his son Abhimanyu's bravery and sacrifice still lingered in his mind. As they entered their camp, Arjuna was met with a sing of despair. His brothers, the Pandavas, sat dejected and sorrowful, their faces pale and drawn, not seeing his beloved son among them. Arjuna's grief turned to anguish. Where is Abhimanyu? He cried out, his voice trembling with emotion. Yudhishthira, sensing Arjuna's distress, tried to reassure him, but Arjuna's lamentations only grew more intense. He described his son as a hero, brave and strong, with eyes like a young gazelle and hair like soft curls. He remembered how Abhimanyu had pierced the enemy's circular array single-handedly and fought valiantly against countless warriors. As Arjuna spoke, his words poured out like a torrent of sorrow. He recalled how Abhimanyu had been born to Suvedra, how he had grown up with the love and adoration of his family, and how he had become a skilled warrior in his own right. Arjuna's grief was all-consuming, and he begged Yudhishthira to tell him if his son had indeed ascended to heaven, having fought bravely against the enemy. Yudhishthira, trying to comfort his brother, replied that Abhimanyu had indeed fought valiantly, but at what cost? Arjuna's heart was shattered, and he lamented the loss of his beloved son. He remembered how Abhimanyu had been surrounded by cruel warriors, and how he must have thought of him as his rescuer in those final moments. As the night wore on, Arjuna's grief only deepened, and he became convinced that his heart was made of the essence of thunder, unbreakable. Even in the face of such sorrow, he knew that Abhimanyu had been a true hero, and that his memory would live on forever. And so, surrounded by his brothers and friends, Arjuna mourned the loss of his son, his heart heavy with grief. Yet still, the sun was setting over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the weary warriors of the Pandavas. Yudhishthira's voice echoed through the air as he addressed his brother Arjuna, their faces etched with grief and concern. O my armed one, he said, after you had gone towards the army of the Samsatakas, our preceptor Drona made fires and devours for seizing me, but the Pandavas were not ones to back down from a challenge. With their car divisions in counter-array, they resisted Drona at all points, holding him off with a large number of warriors. Yudhishthira was well protected, but even so he and his brothers couldn't help but feel the weight of Drona's whetted shafts as the battle raged on. Abhimanyu, the son of Suvedra, urged by his uncles, sought to take on Drona's army. Endued with the energy of Arjuna and aided by the knowledge of weapons he had learned from his father, Abhimanyu charged forward like a good horse taking on an unbearable burden. The young prince was unstoppable, but Jayadratha, the wretched king of the Sindhas, checked all of them with a boon granted to him by Rudra. He had become almost invincible. Drona, Kripa, and Karna surrounded Abhimanyu, and despite his valiant efforts, they deprived him of his charioteers. Abhimanyu fought on foot, just as his son Sasharma managed to make the young prince meet with his hand. The news of Abhimanyu's death sent shockwaves through the Pandava camp. Yudhishthira's words were a testament to their grief. That Teja among men hath even thus ascended to heaven. Arjuna, overcome with emotion, fell down on the earth in great pain. His brothers surrounded him, filled with sorrow and concern. As he recovered consciousness, Arjuna became furious with rage, his eyes bathed in tears. He vowed to slay Jayadratha the next day. No matter what it took, I swear that tomorrow I will slay Jayadratha. Arjuna declared, his voice trembling with determination. If from fear of death he doth not forsake the Dhritarashtras or implore our protection or the protection of Krishna, then I shall assuredly slay him, forgetting his friendship. For me engaged in doing what is agreeable to Dhritarashtra's son, that wretch is the cause of Abhimanyu's slaughters. Arjuna took his oath. The sound of thousands of musical instruments and loud leonine roars arose from the Pandava camp, the regents of the cardinal and subsidiary. The sun had just begun to set over the Kuru camp, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling army. Jayadratha, king of the Saina, sat in his tent, his heart heavy with worry and fear. He had just received news from the spies that the Pandavas were preparing for battle, and he knew that Arjuna, their skilled warrior, was determined to kill him. Sanjaya, the royal advisor, approached Jayadratha and tried to calm him down. Your Majesty, do not be afraid, Sanjaya said gently. You are surrounded by brave warriors who will protect you from harm. But Jayadratha's fear only grew stronger as he thought about Arjuna's vow to kill him. Duryodhana, the prince of the Kauravas, overheard Jayadratha's laments and rushed to his side. Do not worry, my friend, Duryodhana said. Confidently, I will protect you from Arjuna's wrath. We have many brave warriors who will fight alongside us. He listed off the names of his loyal allies: Karna, Shrikrishna, Vivinsatai, and others. Jayadratha listened to Duryodhana's words, but he couldn't shake off his fear. He knew that Arjuna was a formidable warrior, and that no one could protect him from his wrath. So he decided to seek the counsel of Drona, the great general assigned with the Kuru army. That night, Jayadratha visited Drona's tent, accompanied by Duryodhana. He bowed down to Drona's feet in respect and asked for his guidance. O illustrious one, Jayadratha said humbly, I wish to know the difference between myself and Arjuna in terms of skill with arms. Tell me truly, what is my standing compared to Drona? Smiled kindly at Jayadratha and replied, You both have received the same instruction from me. But Arjuna's dedication to his craft has made him superior to you. However, do not fear him, for I will form an array that he cannot penetrate. You are a mighty Kar warrior, born of noble blood, and you have performed many sacrifices. Death should not be a terror to you. Jayadratha listened intently to Drona's words, and his fear began to dissipate. He thought about the wise counsel of Drona and the bravery of his own ancestors. With renewed confidence, he set his heart on battle, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead us. Jayadratha emerged from Drona's tent. His troops cheered him on, their musical instruments playing a lively tune that echoed through the camp. The sound of leonine shots mingled with the music, filling the air with excitement and anticipation for the battles to come. The sun had just set on the Kaurava camp, casting a golden glow over the bustling army. Sanjaya, the trusted advisor to King Dhritarashtra, approached Arjuna, his eyes filled with concern. Arjuna, my prince, he said, his voice low and urgent, I must speak to you about your vow. You have sworn to slay Jayadratha, the ruler of the Saindhas, without consulting me or Vasudeva. Arjuna's face remained steadfast, but Sanjaya could see a hint of unease in his eyes. This is an act of great rashness, Arjuna, he continued. You have taken on a weight that may be too much for you to bear alone. Sanjaya paused, surveying the camp before them. I have sent spies into Jayadratha's camp, and they have reported that our presence here has caused quite a stir among the Dhritarashtras. If on cue a loud uproar erupted from within the Kaurava army. Elephants, steeds, and infantry clashed in a cacophonous din, while the sound of rattling chariots echoed through the air. Sanjaya's words hung in the air as Arjuna's brothers, the Kauravas, prepared for battle, deeply afflicted by the news of Abhimanyu's death. Sanjaya explained, Arjuna will come out to fight tonight, fueled by wrath and a desire for vengeance. The Kaurava army waited with bated breath, readying themselves for the impending clash. As they prepared, Jayadratha, the ruler of the Saindhas, stood up from his tent, his face etched with worry. Dear Sayadhana, Jayadratha said to King Dhritarashtra, I fear that Arjuna will come after me, believing me to be the slayer of his son. What can we do to protect me? The Kaurava king's advisors grew heartless and frightened like little animals cornered in a trap. Sayadhana turned to Drona. the preceptor, and asked for his counsel. Dhananjaya thinks me to be the slayer of his son. Jayadratha explained he has vowed to slay me on the battlefield. What can we do to protect him? Drona's eyes narrowed as he pondered the situation. We must prepare a formidable defense, Drona declared finally Karna. Duras Revas Vrishesna, Kripa, and the ruler of the Madras will form Jayadratha's van. I will create an array with a Sakata formation on one side and a lotus formation on the other in the center of the lotus. We will place a needle on the array Jayadratha would be protected by. The sun had just set on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, casting a golden glow over the armies of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Arjuna, the greatest warrior of his time, sat in his chariot, his eyes fixed intently on Lord Krishna. His charioteer and friend the air was thick with tension as Arjuna's thoughts turned to the task at hand, avenging the death of his cousin, Jayadratha. Krishna, Arjuna said, his voice low and steady, I swear by truth that I will not rest until Jayadratha is brought to justice. These 6 warriors of the Dhritarashtra army may seem formidable, but I assure you their combined strength is no match for mine. He paused, his eyes flashing with determination. Tomorrow, in the sight of Drona and all his men, I will fell Jayadratha's head from its shoulders. The gods themselves will tremble at my prowess. As he spoke, Arjuna's words became more fervent, his voice rising with emotion. If the Siddhas, the Rudras, the Vasas, and even Indra himself were to come to Jayadratha's aid, I would still vanquish him. My Gandhava bow is a celestial instrument imbued with the power of the gods. I am its master, and no one can stand in my way. Krishna listened attentively, his expression unreadable. But as Arjuna continued to speak, his words took on a note of recklessness, a sense that he was driven by more than just duty or honor. He spoke of the blood that would flow of the heads of kings cut off by his arrows, and of the sorrow that would befall Jayadratha's family. Sandhya watched from afar, his eyes fixed on Arjuna as he spoke. He had seen many battles in his lifetime, but never one like this. There was something primal, something almost animalistic about Arjuna's words, a sense that he was tapping into a deep well of fury and determination within himself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the battlefield in darkness, Arjuna's words finally came to an end. He fell silent, his chest heaving with emotion. Krishna sat beside him, his eyes shining with a quiet understanding. Krishna, Arjuna said once more, his voice barely above, while whisper, make sure my chariot is ready by dawn. We have a long night ahead of us. Sandhya nodded to himself as he watched the 2 men part ways. He knew that tomorrow would be a day like no other, a day that would shape the course of his story and seal the fate of the Pandavas and the Kauravas forever. The night was filled with an air of foreboding as Vasudeva and Arjuna lay awake, their hearts heavy with sorrow. The gods themselves were anxious, sensing the rage that burned within the 2 warriors. Sanjaya watched over them, his eyes wide with concern. The darkness deepened. A fierce wind began to blow its dry whispers, carrying an ominous warning. The disk of the sun was veiled by a headless trunk, and amassed their presence foretelling a great calamity. Though the sky was cloudless, thunder boomed through the air, punctuated by flashes of lightning that seemed to dance with malevolent intent. The earth itself trembled, its mountains, waters, and forests shaking in unison. The seas churned with unprecedented ferocity, their waves crashing against the shore as if summoned by some unseen force. Rivers flowed backward, defying their natural course, while animals on the battlefield let out anguished cries as they voided their bladders and bowels. The omens were clear. A great battle was at hand, one that would shake the very foundations of the world. The warriors of Duryodhana's army trembled with fear, their hearts heavy with foreboding. Among them was the mighty son of Pakisisana, who turned to Krishna and bade him comfort his sister Savadra and her daughter-in-law Vasudeva. His heart, weighed down by sorrow, made his way to Arjuna's abode, where he found his sister and daughter-in-law grieving for their fallen son. He approached them with a gentle smile, his words pouring forth like balm to soothe their wounded hearts. A lay of Vrinish's race, he said, do not grieve for your son. All creatures are bound by the wheel of time. It is but a hero's fate to meet death on the battlefield. Your son has achieved the greatest triumph. He has vanquished countless foes and earned his place among the heroes of old. Vasudeva spoke of the righteous path, where warriors attain their ultimate goal through penance.
self-control, and wisdom, he reassured Subhadra that her son had reached the highest realm, one reserved for those who have lived a life of virtues. He spoke his words, woof. A spell of comfort around the grieving women. The Vasudava's eyes held a glimmer of steel, a hint of the fierce determination that burned within him, for he knew that Duryodhana would not escape the consequences of his actions. Tomorrow the head of the Sindhu king would roll on the outskirts of Samatapanchaka. Night wore on its darkness. Illuminated by the promise of dawn, Vasudava's words had soothed the sorrow of Subhadra and her daughter-in-law, but the omens remained, a reminder that the great battle was near.
The sun had set on a day that would be etched in the memories of the Vrishas forever. In the midst of grief and sorrow, Subhadra stood before her beloved son of Abimanyu, whose lifeless body lay before her. She was consumed by anguish, her eyes brimming with tears, as she gazed upon the face that had once shone like a blue lotus of my child. She wailed, "How could you depart from me so soon? Your prowess in battle was unmatched, and your bravery was a reflection of your father's. Why did fate decree that you would fall on the field of war?" Her voice trembled as she recalled the many memories they had shared, the laughter,